We got a lot of international viewers and everything, so welcome. Really love to hang out with you every Wednesday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, New York time. So I'm very, very happy to be with you here. So I want to, before we get started into just a discussion of some of the things that I'm reading, maybe you want to check them out, and I also want to have a discussion with you about what you're reading, and I'd love to hear about what you're reading. We can exchange ideas. This is part of what this is all about as well. But we learn and grow together, right? That's what it's all about. No, I'm just starting. Juan, I'm just starting. Welcome, Juan. Welcome. And here, I just want to just give a shout out to our channel members. Every month, I post a members only video. Just it's kind of a longer form teaching, some technical aspects. So, Bohi Park, Yagmor, Konoslu, JDW357, Philip Garlett, Orhan Saim Demiturk, Gurab Nanda, Stephen Steele, Barry Elrod, Abdul Latif Musa. Welcome, welcome. Shout out to all of our channel members. So appreciate you all. And you support me. You support what I do with the channel. You help keep this going, and you help keep the mission of spreading critical thinking, making critical thinking cool again, right? To more people. So I appreciate all your support. And Nikhil, welcome. Namaste. Namaste. I got my Indian friends on here as well. People from India coming on here. Awesome. Welcome. Nikhil's one of our, biggest attendees, the most consistent attendees and most consistent commenters, right? So welcome, welcome, welcome. So I want to just talk about a few books that I'm reading. I'll share a few of the books that I'm reading now, and these are just a few. I mean, I just picked 4 of them that I'm reading right now, and just as a kind of concepts here, or a forewarning maybe. Forewarning maybe is I read. I don't know how many books I'm reading right now. I haven't actually stopped to count, but I read anywhere from maybe about 10 books or something like that, all at the same time at any given time, and I kind of split them up into each day. If you've seen some of my videos, I talk about how I split them up from day to day, and then I have a review session on Sunday. Sometimes I split them up topically. Welcome, the research. I love your username. Welcome. Shout out to you. And yes, so here's just some. Again, here are just some 4 books that I picked out, and I kind of give you a sense of why I'm reading them. So this one is called A Legacy of Violence, a history of the British Empire. I hope I'm not offending any British people on here, but no offense. I mean, with our history, the thing about history, and the reason I'm reading this, the thing about history is, we have to take a look at the ugly parts of our history, and we have to look at all of it. I mean, I know there's a big movement nowadays to kind of not look at the ugly parts. We don't want to look at all the ugly parts. We want to look at only all the nice parts, right? And that's the thing about this is there's a very important aspect in terms of personal growth. I kind of hate that word in a way, or that phrase nowadays, because it's so overused. So overused. There are so many people using that term in very cliche ways. But let's use the term self-mastery. One aspect of self-mastery, I believe, is very important. Part of self-mastery is to look at our mistakes personally. I mean, just from an individual level, look at our mistakes. Look at what we can learn from our mistakes, and look at our triumphs. Look at the good things that we've done, and look at all of it, and honestly assess, and really just honestly assess, how can we do things better, right? How can we address any wrongs that we have done? And this is a really great book. It's a really, really amazing analysis. She's Carolyn Elkins, Harvard professor. Really, really, I enjoy the analysis, because one thing that it points out is, one major thesis is there is a kind of and this happens, right? You can look at it in French history too. You can look at it in American history. You can look at it in French history. You can look at it in British history. You can look at it in many histories of Western democracies, where they've developed liberal democracies, and this is arguably a very good thing, right? I think having democracy is a really good thing. But then we see that there's this contradiction, right? Okay, so at home we have some democratic institutions, but then overseas, that's not how we handle things, right? And she points out a lot of the ways in which the Lloyd George, for instance, and other politicians in England at the time tried to grapple with this contradiction. Okay, so and Winston Churchill, and uh, she doesn't paint a very good picture of Winston Churchill. Let's put it that way. She's not the biggest fan of Winston Churchill, but listen, it's important to. I actually, when I was in college, I one of the things I really wanted to do, I wanted to read, like, understand, okay, what's the kind of a more conservative, like, what's a book, what's a topic, and then what can I read that's like a conservative point of view? What can I read that's like more of a liberal point of view, or maybe like a leftist point of view? And what are all the kind of ways that I can parse this? Because I want to have a holistic understanding of what's going on. Because when somebody's writing a book, yeah, I mean, yes, and I think aren't we all, Juan? It's true. We're all the product of our time and class, right? In a very real sense. Um, you know, people can't, even scholars, right, cannot help but sometimes, it's scholarship, and in academic research you are trained to try to think of all of the counter arguments, right? But we all have biases, and to some extent we will put those biases into our writing. And how, right? How could you be biased with evidence? Well, you can be selective with evidence. You can leave certain things out, or you have different interpretations of the same events. And so it's important to have. I'm not saying, and this is very important, I'm not saying, oh, you read, for instance, you read Mein Kampf and you say, oh, well, I'm going to consider that perspective. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying you read those kinds of things so that you understand what the thought process is. Right? It's not that everything that you read you have to consider that position. It's you read it so you understand what is the thought process. And even if you're arguing against it, it's even more important to read things that are really vile like that. Let's be honest. Mein Kampf is a piece of trash, right? I mean, we can be real about that. It's complete garbage, complete trash, complete nonsense. But you read the nonsense, you read that garbage, so that you can understand what the thought process is. How do people develop ideas like that? I love this one, Sean Will Lentz. So this is another one I'm kind of rereading. It's Juan. That's a great example, right? Alpha Man. Hey, welcome. That's actually a great example of the kind of the memory that people have of Churchill, right? It's usually not very nuanced. People either have a very great point of view of him, or a very negative point of view of him. In terms of the other book, now I'm not reading this for the first time. I'm reading this. I might be reading this for maybe the third time, because it's such a good book. But this is the third time in over the span of, I don't know, maybe 15 years. What is it? 15 years? I don't know. It's something like that. 14, 15 years. But this is a great book. Sean Will Lentz is an amazing American historian. And one of the things that I love about, you can see, I actually talked about this book in a video. This is how these are notes from maybe 15 years ago. This is how I used to mark up every single book. And you can see I put notes on every single, my own notes on every single one. So let's see. Welcome with the Japanese username. I don't know how to pronounce that, but yeah. So I had a lot of annotations. Yeah, depends on which side you stand. There is a lot of interpretation to history as well. It's not just, there are facts, right? There are facts. There are ways of collecting evidence that are objective. You can do statistical analyses. You can do objective qualitative analyses, but there are ways of investigating, or there are conclusions that you can come to that will be based on value judgments that you make, right? So anyway, this annotation, this is actually how I used to annotate every single one every single one of my books. And I'll discuss this in a moment. I just want to respond to some of you. So, Alpha Man, your final conclusions of free will and determinism in simple words. Free will exists in different between thoughts and actions. Okay. Yeah, in simple words. It's not the topic for today. But because I'm not actually going to be discussing any books that I'm reading currently on free will, although I have even read one maybe in the past few months. But yeah, my view on free will is that we do have a form of free will. There's no doubting that that physical laws determine outcomes for sure, right? And are predictive of outcomes. But within that, and it's a nuanced conversation, I kind of take what would be like Daniel Dennett's, who was a philosopher and cognitive scientist, his point of view. I think he's right. I think he's right on that. And then, yes, okay, Tico, yes, Robert Sapolsky's book, Behaved. I think is it Behaved? It's a while since I've read it. Behaved or Behave. I think it's Behave, not Behaved, right? But yes, great book. Robert Sapolsky's book. Yeah, I just talked about where I stand on free will. Yashovardhan. Sorry if I'm butchering your name. I apologize, but hello, welcome. You know, I'm learning more. I actually take Chinese classes every Friday morning right now, so I'm working on that. Eventually, I have at my gym, I have some guys that speak Punjab. I think there are other guys that speak Hindi. You know, I'm learning one by one. I'm gonna get some. I'm gonna get some ideas. Okay, Alpha Man, veganism and abortion. Actually, those are entire conversations in and of themselves. And actually, it would be good to talk about this, but I don't want to get sidetracked. Alpha Man, these are actually really good topics to talk about. Why don't you, if you're actually really interested in me discussing those types of ethical issues, and we could do that on another live stream, reach out to me. Reach out to me by email or reach out to me by. You can reach out to me. Yeah, probably by email is best, and just shoot me a reminder because the comments on here are transient. I don't want to just give an answer one way or another right now because the answer is nuanced. I think there's a lot to be discussed about, and those two issues have to be discussed with care and nuance. It's not something that we could just hey, this is the answer. There are situations and circumstances and cases we have to consider, and so it's a more complex conversation. But Yashovardhan, how you learn the knowledge of books? Well, I'll talk about that. Back to work. Yeah, thank you, Juan. Hey, Washington Heights. Oh my gosh, Juan, I'm in Queens. That's so cool. So I have another NYC brother on here, so welcome. Happy to have you on here. Washington. I used to live in Washington Heights. Very, very cool. Awesome. You're giving me a lot of nostalgia here. So welcome to my channel anytime. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. Happy to talk to you. So how do I learn the knowledge of books? Well, it's a very that's a very general question. And so I would say I can give a very general answer. I use many techniques. I'm not going to talk. I don't want to get too sidetracked right now. On that, there are videos on my channel about that. But let me say hi to Joyce here. Joyce, welcome. So, what I like about Sean Wilentze's book, and it's called The Rise of American Democracy. What I like about this book is that, you know, when you look at American history, I think it's very easy to, you know, and all of us, no matter what country you live in, it's very easy to create mythologies of our country, of our nation's history. It's very easy to create those national mythologies. And what do? You know, why are national mythologies so appealing? Is because they're simplified. Well, you know, so-and-so thinks this, and so-and-so, you know, these are our values, and so on and so forth. Sean Wilentze, what I like about Sean Wilentze is that, and his historical, like his actual scholarship, is that, hey, Mr. Architect, welcome. what I like about his scholarship, and in general, many historians, but he's very detailed about the nuances behind the founding of the United States, the nuances behind the founding of the different state governments, the nuances behind uh, ideologies of self-governance in the North, the South, in different states. For instance, in Rhode Island, Rhode Island for a while was not any kind of parliamentary system. You had essentially aristocrats, oligarchical, elite people kind of running that. There was no real suffrage there for a while, and the views of the founders were not monolithic. And so I think in the United States we try to. You always hear politicians in the United States. Well, the founders believed. Already they're wrong. Already they're wrong. Just that phrase is wrong. Why is that phrase even wrong? Because there's no one thing that the founders believed. I mean, even from the start, we can go all the way from Thomas Jefferson, who you can say kind of believed in this radical republicanism, all the way to Gouverneur Morris, who believed that the president should serve a life term, right? And to Alexander Hamilton, who believed we should have a centralized, strong central government. To in the states, right? In New York, in New York City, in Pennsylvania, you had very what you might say the equivalent of religious conservatives today, groups, and and certain groups that were radical Democrats. Thomas Paine, radical not Democrat in our sense of the word today, Democrat with a small d, radical democracy. In fact, Thomas Paine believed in redistribution of property. A lot of people don't realize that radical redistribution of property. And actually, in the Pennsylvania Constitution, they tried to get that into the Constitution. So I think when you read history and you read a very detailed analysis like this, it helps you appreciate, well, there wasn't one view, or, national mythologies are kind of just that. They're mythologies. It doesn't mean there isn't some true value there. It just means we have to be careful about what we conclude, and we have to think deeply about what we can conclude about our history, right? And don't choose only based on some sense of tradition. Choosing your value system. Tradition is important to an extent, but not solely on tradition or some mythology of tradition, but also choose your value system on reasoned reflection, right? So anyway, it's a great book. I would say he's fairly neutral in his analysis. He's pretty good. So yes, Rhode Island is a small state. Prasad, welcome. How come I'm into so many things? How come I'm into so many things? I'm very curious. I am infinitely curious. It's like, I'll be honest. So when I look at my dog sometimes, and it's not just sometimes, my dog is right here with me. I think, what is it like to be a dog? I think about questions like that. If I'm like, when I perceive the world as a human. How does my dog perceive the world, right? How do you perceive the world, huh? And just, it's questions. You have to keep being curious about it and asking questions. You look at the fan on your ceiling. Well, how does that work? How does it circulate air? What are the principles that are working there? You have to be curious. It's colder today than it was yesterday, and weird. We're having weird, unexplained. It seems weird to have a hot day in the middle of the fall, right? At least in our hemisphere right here, in northern hemisphere right here in fall. Why do we have a hot day today? So you ask the question. You become curious. Oh, okay. So you become curious and you say, all right, well, I want to figure that out. What are the scientific principles behind that? Alpha Man, is it good to use AI like Notebook? Yes, I believe it's helpful. So Memory Palace, Memory Palace. Listen, Memory Palace is a good method. I think Memory Palace can work, for sure. It depends on what you're using it for. if you're just kind of studying for a test and you need to kind of remember some random facts, it's really helpful. All right, it can be really helpful. I for long-term retention, I just posted a video about this week on Monday. For long-term retention, I prefer just pure argumentation, building arguments, like writing things, writing your thoughts, reflecting, because then when you make arguments, you have to assemble facts, right? How do you remember a lot of the stuff that's in this book? How do you remember a lot of the stuff that's in this book, right? And I'll show you more books that I'm reading. But how do you remember all this stuff? Well, first of all, you don't need to remember every single thing, but how do you remember as much as possible? Well, you make it relevant. How do you make it relevant? You have to make some arguments. What do you think? What do you think about this thesis that Carolyn Elkins, right, has in this book, right, about British history? Do you agree? Do you disagree? It doesn't have to be an informed opinion. It really doesn't. As long as you are aware, it's not an informed opinion, right? As long as you're aware of that and you're honest. You have an opinion, what you might call a provisional opinion. I don't agree with that. Okay, so great. You have to call upon certain facts to make your case. And so that's a really effective way of making the facts relevant. Yeah. So yes. Let's see. Sohail Khan, welcome. Well, my nose is big too, so I don't know. My nose is big too, so I don't know what you want to say. You know, big nose can be a good thing, right? I don't know. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about your nose. Worry about what's in here, and worry about what's in here. Don't worry about what's on your face, right? There are a lot of people who look amazing, look handsome, look hot, whatever, and that's all they have. That's all they have going for them, and that's it, right? But they don't have much going up here. So worry about what's here. So yeah. So actually, let me see. Argument technique. Yeah, exactly. So Ada, welcome. Yeah, Sankey. Yeah, big nose gets you more air to your lungs. Sure. Sure. Yeah, exactly. What's my score? Yeah, I mean, SAT, I can get a perfect score every single time. Because I've taught standardized testing for. I should be able to, right? I've taught SAT testing for years and years and years. Well, Prasad, my score is, I don't even remember, because the score that I got a long time ago was a different scoring system. It was actually because I took it such a long time ago, so I don't. But I can get a perfect score now, and I should be able to, right? Like if I'm teaching it, I should be able to. So, so let's see. So I went to Columbia, but I didn't go for undergrad. I went after my undergrad to Columbia. So, Alpha Man, what do you think about hard problems of consciousness, mathematical reality, like mathematical Platonism? Why? Oh, this is a hard question. You're asking me such a deep question here. I can't answer it in a live right now. I'll tell you this. This is my provisional opinion. I'll say honestly, provisional opinion. I mean, philosophy is my field, but there are many aspects, just like there are many aspects of history, right? You can be an expert in some area of history and kind of be a mini expert in some area, but not know it completely. So based on, in terms of this question about like the metaphysics or the ontology of mathematics, my position is that they are real entities. They are, like, mathematics is something you do discover. I don't think it is something that our minds just create. So again, am I proving that and giving an argument and all of this stuff? No, I'm not right now, because that's a huge rabbit hole to travel down. And so yeah, you take SAT to be in touch. So yeah, Prasad, I mean, this is not this is not a I didn't expect, but I mean, if you want SAT tutoring, I mean, you can feel free to reach out to me. Or I know other good SAT tutors, so if I can't do it myself, because my schedule is very, very full right now, I know good people who could help you as well. So I'm bad at math, but I'm gonna get into finance. Good. Yeah, I mean alpha man, it might be. So same, yeah. I am not Muslim. I am not Muslim. You video, but I respect Muslims, and I respect people who have any kind of religion. I'm not so I'll be honest. I'm not religious myself, but does that give me license to disrespect people for their religion? I think there are people who think, oh, people who believe in a religion are stupid. Like, people say that, right? I don't take that position. So don't confuse me for thinking that is the case. You know, so but I am secular. I would say I'm secular. But listen, change my mind. Everything to me is open for consideration. If you want to change my mind, you're open to change my mind, because given a good argument, given enough evidence, I'm obliged to change my mind based on the consideration of the facts and the facts alone, right? So, I mean, that's it. Now, I am reviewing this one as well, because it's not my field. So in terms of value theory, it's definitely related to my field, but sometimes I like to go back to the basics, and I find it's very important. It's political science research methods. The author is Janet Butolph Johnson, yeah, and H.T. Reynolds. It's the 6th edition. So I find it's very important to go back to some fundamentals with respect to, and I'll answer your question, R.J. Harley. Yeah. What was I gonna say? Yeah. So the live is gonna be, yes. The live is saved afterwards. You can go back and watch it afterwards. It's recorded and it's up on the channel. So it's good to go back to fundamental text. Sometimes you go really high level into something and then you kind of forget about the basics, or like they're you want to go back and review the basics. I think it's very important from time to time. Just go back to an intro book. Just look through and see what it's worth reviewing. Maybe how, for instance, how are operational definitions, derived in political science research? For instance, that's a good question. Now, it may surprise you because you say, oh, well, it's a stereotype if somebody's secular or something like that, they're automatically a relativist. I believe in objective morality, and it's not so much I believe, it's like just my belief. Let me put it this way. There are very good, well-established arguments, and arguments that I have made myself in my own published work. There are very good arguments and very well-established theories for objective morality. Now, you have to parse that. Yeah, I'm married, yes. So, but you have to parse that a little bit, because what do you then mean by objective morality? Like, what are the practical consequences? Because I think when some people, they hear objective morality, that means they think moralism. Okay, what do I mean? What's the difference between morality and moralism? And moralizing. Well, moralism is this sense of, well, okay, what I believe is correct, and it's the one truth, and you must believe it, and I will impose all of my beliefs on you forcefully. Well, that's moralism. By I would argue having an objective morality, and that's a lot of people's view of objective morality. Having objective morality, it doesn't follow from that you should force your beliefs on. In fact, I believe having an objective morality argues against that, forcing your beliefs and imposing and violently kind of suppressing people's beliefs and ideas. I believe you have to actually have an objective morality in order to argue against that very thing. So it's a longer discussion, but yeah, I do think objective morality is as necessary as mathematics, is as necessary as certain structures of mental perception and so on and so forth. I think it's just as fundamental. They're just as fundamental. So yeah, and then context does matter, Raghav, for sure. Objective, yes, context does. So philosophy, yeah, actually, Prasad, yes, philosophy is my core interest, and to that extent, that's why I love statistics and computational modeling. So I actually really, this is another book that I'm actually rereading. Again, the third time I'm rereading it because there's so much you can explore with computational modeling of cognition and behavior. I teach students intro statistics as well. I happen to believe that statistics is one of the most philosophical. Actually, I think it's one of the most philosophical topics. A lot of people look at statistics and they think, oh yeah, boring charts and data analysis. When I see statistics, I see the opposite. I see philosophy, right? What are the implications of having one model versus, what are the philosophical implications of using one model versus another? What does it really mean? What are the implications of having model parsimony, like a parsimonious model? How about loss of information? What's, from one model to the other? Is loss of information from an information theoretical perspective, is that what's the philosophical significance of losing information or retaining it? I mean, these are actually important philosophical questions about the nature of truth and the nature of reality and how you measure, how you predict reality. How does prediction relate to ontology, the actual existence of things? Is it just pragmatic, or is there a deeper existence to things that isn't always captured in models? I mean, these are all philosophical questions that I love about statistics. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I love Richard Feynman. I mean, Richard Feynman was a great example of this. He was a physicist. But it's funny because Feynman was one, I believe, if I think I'm remembering it correctly, but Feynman even kind of thought about, what about, like, we have negative numbers from negative infinity to infinity. We have and positive numbers, negative to positive. Why does probability theory only have to deal with positive numbers? Why can't we have negative probabilities? And so he actually thought about that. No reason we can't have negative probabilities. Like, he actually thought about that. Now, it's controversial. Can you have a negative probability? But it's that kind of thinking that's really, I think, the way we should all think. Like, try to push the boundaries of what you're told. We're taught these things, memorize this, memorize that. Question it a little bit. Well, why is it that way? And at the end of the day, maybe you'll get to the very edge of where you can push the limits, and you'll say, you know what? Okay, actually, I accept those. I accept that law or that idea because now I've examined it fully. Or you might actually end up pushing the boundaries so much that you make a discovery yourself. You discover something that nobody ever saw before, and that's really the beauty of critical thinking. So, yeah, Feynman. Physicalism, idealism, dualism, yeah, that's a loaded conversation, Alpha Man, because it depends on what you mean by those things, quite honestly. So, Colomo, welcome. You video 100, yeah, I mean, that's another, so, if God created the world, then who created God? I have no answer to that. Right, that's one of the questions in the argument, what's called the argument from first cause, there are kind of a couple names for that, but argument from first cause, that's Aristotle's kind of name. He thought this kind of entity was a self-causing cause, right? Longer conversation, as I said. Yeah, God of the gaps, right? Raghav, God of the gaps is kind of the answer to that. We don't know, but it doesn't mean we make some specific conclusion from that, right? With lack of knowledge. So, yeah, I appreciate you all on here, and I really appreciate being with you every single week. Feel free to have a conversation with me. Feel free to reach out to me. Like, I recently changed my channel title because I felt more inspired. I'm feeling more and more inspired about and clear about what my mission is with the channel now. And you'll see on the top of my channel, it says I'm on a mission to make critical thinking into a movement. And I truly am. I truly am. And so the question is, are you with me? Are you with me to help bring critical thinking to everybody, right? And the reason I'm optimistic about it is because research suggests IQ can't potentially maybe be changed. Maybe there's still maybe some debate about that. But critical thinking ability, regardless of IQ level, critical thinking ability, there's very good evidence to show that this can be trained. This is trainable. So how are we encouraging critical thinking not only in ourselves, but in other people every single day? Every single day. We can change the climate of discourse, I believe, by promoting critical thinking. So, all right, guys. So feel free to subscribe to the channel. Feel free to watch more of my videos. Feel free to reach out to me personally. And if you want to work with me personally, feel free to check out my Critical Thinking Academy in any of the links in my in the descriptions of any of my videos. And love being with you. Love you all. Just great live stream today, and I want to hear from you. All right, take care, guys.